You've got to go further back. And you've got to understand and question, why do they do this throughout the whole of America, in all the public schools? Why do they only go back as far as the 16th and the 17th century to talk about slavery? We've got to go further back than that. Because Islam designed infernal slavery. And then the Ashkenazi Khazars, those who say they are Jews and are not, are the ones that marketed it. And the regal Negro nomads, exiled from the kingdom of Judah, were the main recipients of it at the hands of the indigenous black Africans. Because you've got to understand, the regal class of the house of Judah came down from Israel, and they came into the land of the black Africans.
Come.
And the black Africans resented the regal class of the house of Judah in their land because they had laws, they had customs, they had civility. And they were a regal class of Negro that came down into Africa. And later on, it was the Ashkenazi, the Islamic slave traders as well, that then worked together with the indigenous black Africans to enslave the regal house of Judah.
All right, Shalom. Shalom. All right, it's your brother ICR, and I got the brother Sagala with me. All right, this is GMS Charlotte. You know, we had basically an open forum or a response, okay, to this video here. As you hear, this Edomite basically admitting the truth. And what we wanted to land back on is how he stated that you had the Islamic slave traders, which basically were the Ishmaelites, all right, the so-called Arabs or Arabs, however you want to pronounce them. And then you had the indigenous black Africans that he said, which were the Hamites, okay? And I wanted to bring out the scriptures about how these nations came together, all right, with that one consent, all right, to put us in slavery and to destroy us, man, all right, because Ishmael, all right, the Arabs, all right, and then the so-called Africans, the actual Hamites, okay, they came together to enslave Judah, all right, to enslave you so-called Negroes, or who you would call Negroes, black Americans today. All right, so I wanted to grab, matter of fact, let me get Psalms 83. I'm going to pull this up on the screen. You can read it too right there, bro. And then we'll just go from there. All right, so go ahead. You can read that from the top.
This is Psalms.
Matter of fact, I'll pull up the table of nations. Go ahead.
This is Psalms 83 and 1. Keep not thy silence, O power. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee, Salakia, have lifted up the head. Verse 3, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people.
Right. So the scriptures say that our enemies have taken crafty counsel against thy people, man. The Israelites, man. All right, keep going.
And consulted against thy hidden ones.
And it says they consulted against thy hidden ones, man. So when you read the scriptures, all right, Israel is known as the hidden ones, man, or the hidden treasure, all right. So we're the hidden ones, man. All right, we're the holy people of the scriptures, man. All right, keep going.
Verse 4, they have said, "Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance."
Right. So these nations, all right, they came together, all right, with that crafty counsel to eliminate the nation of Israel. All right. This is written in the scriptures, man. And as you heard the Edomite said, he said that the indigenous black Africans and the Islamic slave traders came together to help sell you you Negroes to the so-called white men. All right. They were all in it. Go ahead.
Come. Verse 5. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee.
Right. The scriptures say they have, matter of fact, let me pull it up. It says they have consulted together with one consent. Okay. They are confederate against thee. All right. Let me pull up this word confederate. All right. So they're in a covenant and an alliance and a pledge with one another against you Israelites, man. These nations, man. All right. That's why under this today, what you have the so-called New World Order, you know, all these nations are in agreement to destroy you Israelites, man. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, man. But keep going up.
Verse 6, the tabernacles of Edom.
It says the tabernacles of Edom. Tabernacle meaning house, the house of Edom. All right, the so-called white man. All right, he was part of that conspiracy. All right, to destroy the nation of Israel. Keep going.
The Ishmaelites.
The Ishmaelites. All right, what you see here, you Arabs. All right, you so-called Arab people. All right, Ishmael. Go ahead.
Moab.
Moab. All right, the Chinese.
And the Hagarenes.
Hagarenes, which is an African nation. Go ahead.
Gebal and Ammon.
Ammon. All right, the so-called Japanese. Go ahead.
And Amalek.
Amalek, which is you. Matter of fact, let me pull that picture back up. Which is you Amalekites, you so-called Jews, man. You Khazars, man. Right here, this guy, Dr. Seymour B. Liebman, he said the ships were not only owned by the Jews, but were manned by Jewish crews and sailed under the command of Jewish captains. All right, this is in this book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, man. All right, because they funded the slave trade, man. When you do the research in the history, all right, they were behind. They funded the slave trade. You had Ishmael and Ham, who was rounding you Jakes up, man. All right, to be sold off into these different slave markets, man. That's why you have the transatlantic slave trade. Actually, you had the trans-Saharan slave trade. All right, you had the transatlantic slave trade. You had the East African slave trade. You had the Dutch slave trade, man. All right, all of these nations, all right, were involved in the in trafficking you niggas, man, all across the world, man. You know, you Israelites. All right? Keep going out.
The Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Verse 8, Ashur also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot. Salah.
All right, and that's the point, man. So the point of us bringing these scriptures out is that these nations, all these nations that you see, have taken crafty counsel against you Israelites, man. This is biblical prophecy, man. As you just heard, this Edomite bringing out different aspects of it, all right? So he mentioned about the Islamic slave traders who we know were these so-called Arabs here, right? So I got this article here, all right, from faithfreedom.org. It says Islamic slavery Holocaust, because this is what you Negroes don't know, man. That the Muslims, man, all right, which you so-called black Muslims out there that practice Islam, all right, this is part of the history, all right? It says Islamic slavery Holocaust, 120 million blacks murdered. It says racism, one of the greatest criminal acts by man against man, murdering the Quran with fire of truth series. And let me jump to the point, all right? And we're going to bounce around a little bit. But when you read down here, okay, it says racism and slavery are divine eternal institutions of the Most High. All right, getting straight to the point. It says in Islam, God is a slaver who sanctions enslaving other people by Muslims in the Quran. All right. It says Prophet Muhammad was a slaver who took 20% of the profits derived from sale of slaves. He also owned 40 slaves. He beat and raped his slaves. He hated blacks and compared them to Satan. Some 120 million blacks were murdered by Muslims by it says the greatest Holocaust in history. Of hunted black slaves, some 75% of them died on the way of Islamic slave markets. All black male slaves were castrated. While most slaves were sent to the Americas, could marry and have families, most of the male black slaves destined for Muslim world were castrated. Millions more died in unhygienic operations for castrating them, and most of the black children born to women were killed at birth. All right? And it says it was noted that black slaves were castrated based on the assumption that blacks had an ungovernable sexual appetite. Conducted without the use of anesthetic, the process was horrific, with 60% of mortality rate. All right? And I'm going to read this last part here. Ibn Khaldun, 1332 to 1406, a preeminent Islamic historian, wrote, the Negro nations are as a rule submissive to slavery because they have attributes that are similar to dumb animals, man. All right, so this is what these nations thought about you, man. All right, the so-called white man looks at you as a dumb animal. All right, these Ishmaelites look at you as a dumb animal, and these Hamites too. And when you go into some of the history, these Hamites was selling you that was eating Jake. All right, when you go into some of the history of Esau, they was eating Jake, man. You know these nations, right? They're the detestable people, man. You know, so just wanted to bring out some historical narrative, man. All right. Let me bring this out too. As a matter of fact, get that definition of ham for me real quick too. Hold that, because I wanted to add on to this video here, because this guy, he's going to the fact about how you had black Africans, all right, selling other blacks or black Africans into slavery, which is not true, all right, because matter of fact, let me get this scripture before I played it. All right, this is you can read this out.
This is Exodus 11:7. It says, "But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel."
Right. So Yahweh Shem Yahushai, he put a difference between the Israelites and the Egyptians, or you Hamites, man. All right. Can you get that definition real quick in the Bible dictionary? Because, all right, you had Hamites, all right, which the Edomite said in the video earlier. You had who were considered the indigenous Africans of the land. Those were Hamites, man. All right. So-called Negroes and actual Africans are not the same people, man. Just because we have dark skin. And I'm going to read this definition in the Bible dictionary. It proves that. Go ahead, Aaron.
This is the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. This is page 213. It's the definition of Ham. It says, Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races.
Right. It says Ham became the progenitor of the dark races. Go ahead.
But not the Negroes.
But not the Negroes, man. So we're not Africans, man. We're not Hamites, man. All right. Go ahead.
But the Egyptians.
But the Egyptians.
The Ethiopians. The Libyans. And the Canaanites.
Right. Those are the Hamites, man. Those are the Africans. Those are the so-called African nations, man. All right. As we just read the scripture, the Lord put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel, man. All right. So you had, as the point of this lesson, all right, a part of that crafty counsel, you had these nations that came together to enslave you Israelites, man. Let me play this real quick. All right.
Slavery was big business. Africans sold other Africans to the Europeans. We can only begin to imagine the sheer horror of the slave trade. Yeah. How do you think he was captured? Probably through a war. You know, there were African middlemen, and they would fight wars with other Africans to enslave them to sell to the white man. Slavery was a huge business for different African kingdoms. You know the story that we got when we were kids, that your ancestor was out on one Sunday with his girlfriend and some white man jumps out of the bush and throws a net over? It's not how it happened. Slavery was big business. Africans sold other Africans to the Europeans.
Right. So, and the reason why we brought this clip out is because that's the argument that these Edomites like to use, man. They like to say, well, you can't be mad at us because your own people sold you into slavery too. All right. Which is not true, man. You had the actual Hamites, all right, who knew who we were and rounded us up along with Ishmael, the so-called Arabs, to sell us in the slave markets, man. This is actual scholarship that you brothers can read for yourself, all right, and to prove what we're saying is true, man. All right, it wasn't so-called blacks selling other blacks in slavery, man. It was our actual enemies, man. And we just read the scriptures. Can I get Joel 3:3? You know, and I'll pull it up on the screen because all of this is prophecy. Okay.
All right. This is Joel 3, verse 3. And they have cast lots for my people.
Right. They have cast lots for my people, man. And Jake, when you read the scriptures, Jake was being sold at these slave auctions, man. His families were ripped apart, separated. They cast lots for my people. Go ahead.
And have given a boy for an harlot.
And it says have given a boy for a harlot, man. All right. And then a good movie brothers can watch is the movie Goodbye Uncle Tom. All right. Which was a real movie about slavery of Jake, man. All right. And the scripture said that they have given a boy for a harlot, man, which is a prostitute or a sex slave, man. Because when you read the history, they were selling male Israelites off to these heathen for sex slaves, man. All right.
If I can add also a little history on that goes into how Jake, when it speaks about being sold a boy for a harlot, the term motherfucker being Jake actually having sex with his mom. So that's the kind of stuff that was going on.
Yeah, because they was breeding Jake like dogs and horses, man. Like animals. As we read in the article, they said the Islamic people, the Islamic slaveholders, referred Negroes to animals, to dumb animals. Right? Go ahead.
And sold a girl for wine.
Right, and sold a girl for wine. The Israelite woman, she was being traded for wine and liquor, man. Other sorts of raw materials. All right, because this was like the brother, like the video we pulled up. The slave trade was big business, man.
That's right.
Go ahead.
That they might drink.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, keep going.
Verse 4. Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre, and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine?
Right, because these are Hamitic nations, and then you had the so-called Jew, all right, the Amalekite, who was sponsoring, basically funding the slave trade. What do you have to do with the Lord? Keep going.
Will ye render me a recompense?
Go ahead.
And if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head?
Right, and the Lord is going to revenge his people for what these nations done to us, man. Go ahead.
Verse 5, because ye have taken my silver and my gold and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things.
Right, because during these times of the slave trade, Jake was being sold, for money. All right. Jake, the temple was destroyed, throughout different parts of history. The heathen went in our land. All right, they took our culture. They stole our, they stole our possessions, man. So this is all part of the ruining of Jerusalem. This is part of our history, man, of our enemies gaining a stronghold on us, man. Go ahead.
Verse 6, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians.
Right, and that's prophecy. The children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem you have sold unto the Grecians, man. All right, which is the so-called white men, the Edomites, man.
That's right.
All right, these nations came together and they sold us into slavery into these different lands, man. All right, this is our history. Keep going.
That ye might remove them far from their border. Verse 7, behold, I will raise them up, Salakia. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head.
Right. So, and that's it. And that's it right there, because the Lord is raising up, all right, his elect that's been scattered abroad. All right. And the scriptures say that I will return your recompense upon your own head, because these nations are going to go into slavery, man.
That's right.
All right. So just like how we had to serve hardcore bondage, all right, when the Lord lifts us up, all right, and lifts up his people and Israel's back in power, you nations are going to go into slavery, man.
That's right.
All right. That's the balance, man. And I see if you had any more things, you could bring something up. You got anything else?
We was talking a little bit about Ishmael.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is from this is a little bit more information on Ishmael. This is dealing with the Arab slave trade, which was roughly about 200 years before the transatlantic slave trade.
Yep.
This is an article from June the 2nd, 2014, and it's titled 10 Facts About the Arab Enslavement of Black People Not Taught in Schools. It says the number of people enslaved by Muslims has been a hotly debated topic, especially when the millions of Africans forced from their homelands are considered. Some historians estimate that between AD 650 and 1900, 10 to 20 million people were enslaved by Arab slave traders. Others believe over 20 million enslaved Africans alone have been delivered from the trans-Saharan route along to the Islamic world. Dr. Abimala Azuma In his 2001 book, The Legacy of Arab Islam, in Africa estimates that over 80 million black people more died en route. Mm-hmm. So this is just article. It was just a little bit more information dealing with the Arab slave trade. You keep hearing the terms, is we want to make the differentiation between being called African. And the scholars know this. The scriptures and the history is all there. There's a separation. Okay. All throughout the scriptures, all throughout history. There's no confusion about this. So this confusion is there about Africans and trying to link Israelites to Africans. It's nonsense.
God, you know. So hey, you know, we just wanted to bring out a couple facts to add on to the video, man. So hopefully that lesson was edifying. Before we close, I want to give all praise and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to our elders and apostles. A great millstone taught us is true. And salutations to all your Akim out there that's pushing. Shalom.
Shalom.